The European Union has a new, fastest citizenship that you can get, and it's now possible to become a European citizen in as little as 3 years. I'm going to talk about it, but there are some caveats to this, and there is some misinformation going around. Cyprus is the country now saying they will naturalize certain people within just 3 years of holding a residence permit there. We're going to talk about this. 3 years to me is pretty interesting because it was a long time ago, at least a decade, when Belgium last said 3 years was their minimum for getting citizenship. They had, I think it was 3, 5, and then 7. And depending on your level of integration and how they felt about you, you could get citizenship within those timelines. And what I think is the European Union kind of got together and said, hey, listen, 5 years should be the floor, because basically 5 years is the floor for being naturalized in any number of countries. So Ireland, for example, you can move there, live for 5 years. If you're watching this, you probably already speak English, and you can get their citizenship. Malta, for example, they say it's 5 years. In practice, via naturalization, it's 18 years, which makes that 7-figure donation route more attractive for someone who can afford that. And so, bottom line is, all European Union countries naturalize at different paces, but 5 years has kind of become the minimum. And for a nomad capitalist, the question there is, how do you relocate to that country and deal with the taxes? Because some people don't want to or can't relocate. That's why they have golden visas. That's why they have citizenship by investment. That's for the person who can't relocate. If you're willing to relocate and have a plan A, where am I going? Well, you don't want to move to France, for example, where you're going to pay a fortune in taxes. Why would you move yourself and your business all around the world to pay taxes in France? And so Cyprus is speeding up the naturalization timeline for specific people. We'll get to that in just 1 second. And they offer a non-dom program that basically, while you're waiting until you become a citizen, you can take advantage of a very favorable tax regime. So it's favorable to be naturalized in a European Union country that lets you live in any of the other European Union countries, that lets you travel pretty much anywhere in the world, except Cypriots cannot travel to the United States as part of the visa waiver program. And again, while you're putting your time in on the ground, you do not have to pay the 40 and 50% taxes that you would see in much of Europe. All right, so here's the deal. Back in April, Cyprus updated their population registry law, and one of the things that did was provide for a 3-year naturalization period for professionals who learn Greek. So the Republic of Cyprus, much of the island of Cyprus, in the Mediterranean. Only Turkey recognizes the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus to the north. So you've got this kind of buffer zone in the middle. But obviously Cyprus says, hey, the whole thing is ours. They speak Greek. And so if you're willing to move there, if you're a professional and you learn Greek, they're willing to give you a European Union passport in 3 years. That could open up a lot of doors for someone who really wants that tier A- passport, because you can't go to the US. Basically what Cyprus is trying to do is say, we want people who are coming here to be economically established. We want you to have some cash. We don't want you to come here looking for a job. Cyprus has long had a golden visa program. Buy real estate, live here. Focused on retirees, primarily from places like the UK. They also are focusing on cultural integration. We want you to become part of our country. So what they're saying is, 3-year track to citizenship, shortest naturalization period in the European Union, and there's a law in Cyprus that says you have to get a decision on your naturalization application in 8 months. Now, other countries in Europe have that. Portugal has that, for example, with the Golden Visa program. The government doesn't follow its own rules all the time, silly. They choose which rules they want to follow. I think that Cyprus has done a decent job. If you look at the Golden Visa, there was a slow track, there was a fast track, and I think they've done a better job than some of the European countries. It's a more pro-business, set up your company, low taxes, non-dom, we want people to come here. So they may well actually follow that 8 months, in which case, 3 years and 8 months from when your residence is granted and you are in Cyprus, you can get that passport. Nobody really talks about how long it takes to actually get approved for the passport. There are some countries where the application just goes into a vortex for years. You never get the passport. We've talked about Panama as an example of that for some time. Malta, we discovered a couple years ago. Yeah, they say 5 years. Okay, good luck with that. Watch your application go into a vortex. Come back in 13 years, they'll tell you. There was some misinformation around this where I saw one of these flim-flammers saying, "Oh, you can get citizenship in Cyprus in 8 months. You know, type a comment and get all the details. Citizenship in 8 months." I even had a friend of mine send this to me. I had a girl who she'd like to get a European citizenship, and she's like, "Is this for real?" And I'm like, "Yeah, 8 months is the processing time once you've put in the 3 years. So you got to really be careful who you're talking to." So here are the requirements. In the last year, you got to basically spend the full year living in Cyprus. Not the only European country to do that. They'll let you leave for short absences for no more than 90 days that do not break the continuity. But basically for that year before you're applying, you really need to be living there. And then throughout the entire 3 years, you need to have lawful residence. You need to have a residence permit. And I think they're really pushing, as I said, cultural integration. This is not something to get for, just to keep in your back pocket, go for one day. They want you to be there. When you're applying to be naturalized, to get your citizenship, you're going to want to show that you've actually been living there with short absences. And I would argue perhaps that might be, as this unfolds, that will prove to be the more prudent thing to do is make Cyprus your home for 3 years. Now, there are a couple tracks that you can go through. There's a 3-year track, there's a 4-year track, and there's a 7-year track. Those are the amount of years that you need to spend within the last decade. Okay. Now, what they're looking for is B1 level Greek. So it's not C level, it's B1 level. So that's decent competence, more than conversational. If you're willing to wait an extra year, they may bring that down to A2. So, 3 years, you have to know a little bit more. 4 years, you know a little bit less. You'll also need to learn something about the country. That's generally true with any kind of naturalization process. You'll need to have a place to live. You'll need to have a stable income. So they've generally historically said that's between 30 and 40,000 euros per year. And they want to know that you will continue to live in the country. How enforceable is that? Nobody can really say in the kind of countries that ask you to do that. What we do know is the qualification to be professional is you have to make 2,500 euros per month. You have to have a university degree or equivalent, so I'm out. And you have to have 2 years of relevant employment experience as a professional. If you can prove that, you can go in the 3-year or the 4-year track for highly qualified employees. You should be working for an international company as a director, key personnel, or a specialist. And you'll basically prove that, and you'll be able to get your residence permit and come. Now, what's interesting about Cyprus is they are one of the now 3 countries that has a pure non-domiciled tax program. So Ireland, Malta, and Cyprus, which is, if you're just coming there on your residence permit, you'll pay tax on Cyprus source income. But if you have incomes overseas that aren't remitted into Cyprus, those will not be taxed. Now, over the course of time, as you evolve through the process, that benefit could go away. And then you'll decide, do I want to keep living in Cyprus or do I want to go and live in Ireland or Malta, which you can do, or countries with the lump sum programs, Switzerland, Italy, Greece have programs. So having the Cyprus passport, if you can prove that you learned some Greek, obviously you'd have 2 countries you could live in and speak Greek within the European Union. That opens a lot of doors. So tax friendliness for the first 3, or if you want to do it 4 years, that could also work, and the possibility to get a passport. Here's the interesting question. Are you willing to trade spending 3 years of your life? I would argue what's going to probably become the best advice is you're there for the majority of the year. Now you're a Cyprus tax resident, and they have different ways to become tax resident, but surely if you're there for the majority of the year, you're going to be a tax resident. Hey, having a European Union tax residence with the exception of a few investments in Asian banks and stuff like that, it's not the worst thing in the world. People take that more seriously. Maybe not Cyprus as much as some others, but anyway, you have a European Union tax residence. You have a very favorable tax situation. You're working towards a very good passport. Are you willing to trade living somewhere else for those 3 years in order to get that high quality passport? It's not going to cost you that much. No, it's going to cost you a little bit in taxes. There's going to be a little bit of paperwork to do, so it's not a totally zero tax place. But let's compare this again. I'm talking a lot about Dubai's new 9% tax now on corporations. You live in Dubai, you pay 9%. You could set up your company as a non-dom in Cyprus, set up the company in any number of tax-friendly places. Now, you might want a Cypriot entity as part of your structure, but a lot of the money could be going to an offshore structure. You'll pay some tax in Cyprus. And I would say for a successful person, on the whole, you're going to pay less than 9% And if you're willing to live there, you're going to get a citizenship, which the UAE is not going to offer you. Now, neither is Malaysia, neither effectively is Panama or many of the other tax-friendly places that we talk about, but that's the benefit of Europe. The question is, are you willing to do that? The alternative to get a citizenship, it's pretty close to the value of a Cyprus passport, is Malta's program. All in, you're looking at about, with the fees, about $1 million for one person, add a couple bucks for every dependent. Maltese citizens can go to the U.S., Cypriot citizens can't. That may change in the future, where Cypriots can. But is it worth living somewhere for the good chunk of 3 years, paying a few bucks, which maybe you would have paid to live somewhere else, to save yourself $1 million if you look at it as a passport play? And do you look at learning the language as something that you're willing to do to be a little bit closer to the place where you live? So that's the kind of thing we help our clients work through, because there's no right answer. For some people, pay $1 million, spend a very de minimis amount of time in Malta to establish your residence, and on you go. Or hey, maybe I'd rather have just a residence permit in Europe. I don't ever want to be a European citizen. I'm sure I'll always be able to be a resident of some European country and move around. Hey, get me the Caribbean citizenship for a much lower price. Or hey, you know what? I don't believe in second citizenship. Just where do I move to lower my taxes? Not my exact advice, but for some folks, that's their plan. So these are the kinds of scenarios that we're going to run by a client. For some people, it is worth putting 3 years in the ground because, hey, they're looking for a place in the Mediterranean anyway. I've been to Cyprus, like many places like that, Malta and Cyprus. Montenegro is on an island, but it has kind of the same vibes. It's a little sleepy at times. They do have a port. I would argue that the port in Montenegro is a little cooler. That's just my personal preference. For somebody who wants a bit more relaxed lifestyle, who wants to live in a pro-business place by European standards, it's not the worst place to go. It is not Dubai with the big malls and the nightlife and everything that comes with that. But, you're going to pay less, I think, net living in Cyprus under this plan and get a passport than you would living in a place like the UAE. So these are the kinds of things you want to be aware of. 3 years to citizenship plus a statutory 8-month approval time. What I want you to be aware of is don't fall for the folks who just put out misinformation. There's a lot of it going around. This is an interesting option for some folks, but you never want to buy the brand name. Like, you never want to say, I only want Cyprus, unless your wife is from Cyprus or something. Okay, fine. But otherwise, what problem do you want to solve? This solves taxes, this solves citizenship. It doesn't solve freedom of where you live. That's the kind of thing we work with you on. You want to know the facts. We've helped people move to 31 different tax-friendly countries, including Cyprus. And now you've got one more reason to consider this one.